Good morning. Labour's narrowly won the Batley Spen by-election in West Yorkshire. The new MP, Kim Leadbeater, now represents a seat previously held by her sister Jo Cox, who was murdered in the constituency in 2016. Well, the result will ease pressure on Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer after recent election defeats for his party. Ms Leadbeater saw the party's majority cut from more than 3,500 to 323 after a strong challenge from the Conservative candidate Ryan Stevenson. The former Labour and Respect MP George Galloway, who had targeted Labour voters, came in third. Let's get this report now from our political correspondent Nick Eardley.
I do hereby declare that Kim Michelle Leadbeater is duly elected.
It was the narrowest of wins, but one that was met with a mighty sense of relief by Labour. Kim Leadbeater is the new MP here, beating her Conservative rival by just over 300 votes. But in a seat many thought would turn blue overnight, Labour are delighted. The campaign here has been heated, with allegations of harassment and the police sometimes accompanying candidates. The new MP said she wanted to heal some of the divisions.
I will do my very best to represent the whole of Batley Spen as their new MP. I'm absolutely delighted that the people of Batley Spen have rejected division and they've voted for hope.
And this result has extra significance for Kim Leadbeater. Her sister, Jo Cox, used to be the MP here. She was murdered in 2016 by a far-right extremist.
It's inevitable not to think about Jo and Mum and Dad and particularly Jo's children. Obviously, as I've said before, it was a very big decision to put myself forward. It has been a very emotional campaign and today is very emotional for me for lots of reasons. But if I can be half the MP that Jo was, I know that I'll do her proud and I'll do my family proud. And fingers crossed that I'll do a fantastic job just as she did.
We're all incredibly proud of what Kim's done. She was incredibly brave to step forward into it, not just around the sort of security side of things, given what happened to Jo, but also just the context. It was a sort of, very bruising and pretty horrible campaign at times, and to put yourself into that, to try to keep positive, to try to keep a vision focused on what you want to change and how you bring people together. I think she's done an amazing, win or lose, frankly, would have been just as proud of her.
The result is also a massive relief for the Labour leader. Keir Starmer has faced pressure in recent weeks over his strategy. If Labour had lost, the criticism would have increased and something his job would have been in question. But instead, his allies say if this was a referendum on his leadership, he's won. Nick Eardley, BBC News, Batley Spen.
And Nick joins us live now. So Labour and Keir Starmer breathing a sigh of relief this morning.
Yeah, I think that's right, Ben, because although it's pretty rare for governing parties to win by-elections and seats held by the opposition, the forces kind of had been against the Labour Party in this seat. You had George Galloway standing, winning thousands of votes from traditional Labour voters. There were some pro-Brexit candidates who stood last time who weren't standing this time. So there had been quite a high level of expectation that the Tories would potentially win this seat. So absolutely massively a sigh of relief for Keir Starmer and Labour that they've managed to hold on to it. So there's the personal element which you heard about just there, the fact that Kim Leadbeater says she ran a very local campaign, that local issues were a big part of this, and she thinks it's a victory for decency really in what has been quite at times a heated campaign on the ground in Batley Spen. But the national picture is also quite significantly changed by what we saw overnight, because Keir Starmer had been under huge pressure over his handling of the Labour leadership. There had been some speculating that had Labour lost today, after the loss in Hartlepool as well, that potentially over time Keir Starmer may have faced some sort of leadership challenge. That talk will now wane, certainly talk of a leadership challenge will wane. I don't think it means questions over Labour's future and Labour's strategy will go away, because there are still some who are worried that Keir Starmer hasn't set out enough of a vision about what he wants from the country and that he needs to be a lot more nakedly political sometimes in the way that he deals with his campaigning. But certainly in terms of the immediate pressure on Keir Starmer, this takes a lot of that pressure off.
All right, Nick, thank you very much indeed. Nick Eardley there, our political correspondent. Well, Ms Leadbeater said that the focus of the campaign was very much on listening to local people, but she also said it was marred by personal abuse and allegations of dirty tricks.
We need to do politics better. We need to do politics differently. There's no place for abuse, intimidation, you know, for me personally, but actually for the people who were campaigning with me. We've had things thrown at people, we've had an assault, you know, someone's been arrested. That's not what we need in our communities, that's what we need in our country. And if I can just work a little bit through this role to try and improve things and try and show a different way, then I think that's really important.
And you didn't name George Galloway directly in that tweet last night, but was that directed at him and his party, or was it a broader message? I
think there's a broader message around how we do politics and what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. But there are certainly individuals during this campaign who have, in my view, overstepped the mark of what's acceptable.
So after victory, is there a message for those people?
Yeah, the message now is let's think about, you know, the way that we want our country to be run, the way that we want our politics to be done. Let's think about, you know, what it means to people. The big thing for me as well is the number of people who don't vote. You know, so many people just, and that's because they're just disengaged with it. So we have to think about how we can reconnect with people who, you know, I don't know what the turnout was, but it wasn't great. It was less than 50%. You know, for those 50% of people that have stayed at home, I don't blame them for not coming out and voting when they see some of the scenes that they've seen over the last few weeks. So let's think about how we can make politics more relatable and we can engage people with it more.
What's going to be your first priority for the constituency?
First priority is to start getting people together. That's my big thing. That's one of the things I'm good at. So all the stuff we've talked about, whether it's crime and antisocial behaviour, whether it's the state of the roads, who are the people who can make a difference, who are the people who can act on these things. Let's get the councillors together, let's get the police involved, let's look at where we can get some funding, you know, get people around the table and have those conversations.
And do you think the Conservatives took their foot off the pedal and maybe thought this one, after Hartlepool, was perhaps in the bag?
I think the Conservatives were kind of hoping that someone else would do their work for them. But listen, they've been nothing but respectful throughout the campaign, and I think that's really important to say as well, as have the Lib Dems and other candidates, you know. So I think it's been a very civilised campaign, and I respect Ryan Stevenson and his team for the way that they've conducted themselves.
And just finally, how do you feel going to the House of Commons next week and following on from where Joe left off 5 years ago?
It's really emotional, of course it is. You know, I've just spoken to Mum and Dad, and as a family, this is a huge deal. It's massive, but if I can be half as good an MP as Joe was, then I will be very proud of that.